All right, we are jumping right into our explainer today based on a really powerful short story called Maryville Reunion. We're going to be unpacking this deeply human experience of nostalgia. You know that feeling, right? That overwhelming pull to just revisit the past. We're following a guy named Harold Freeman. He decides to head back to his childhood hometown after being away for over 4 decades. But what actually happens when the past you're trying so hard to chase simply doesn't exist anymore? This explainer is going to walk us through a really profound and honestly heartbreaking look at the very real dangers of trying to walk backward in time.
It's kind of a universal question, isn't it? Can you ever really go back home? We all carry around these perfectly preserved mental snapshots of where we grew up, the people we knew, the exact streets we walked. For Harold Freeman, 40 entire years had passed since he left Maryville. He goes back basically trying to map his fondest, warmest memories onto the physical landscape of his youth. He's looking to reconnect with the ghosts of this golden, distant time. But as we're about to see, nostalgia often writes checks that reality just cannot cash. Section 1. Chasing Ghosts in Maryville. So as Harold starts his journey, driving down the cracked asphalt of a town that has pretty much completely forgotten him, the whole illusion starts to fracture. He's actively searching for anything familiar. He's looking for old friends, maybe a friendly wave from a front porch, but instead, he's just driving through a landscape of ghosts. And to really understand what happened to Harold's hometown, you just have to look at one number: 3,000. Maryville became one of those classic American towns where people just grew up, packed their bags, and left. Out of the 20,000 or so people that used to be scattered around the area, only a mere 3,000 or 4,000 remain in the quiet, faded town center itself. The vibrant community of his youth has essentially just evaporated. And it wasn't just the people who were gone. The actual physical landmarks of his childhood had been totally erased. He visits his old grade school and his junior high, only to find them extensively remodeled into these sterile, completely unrecognizable buildings. The brick and mortar places he knew so well, gone. And it gets worse. His old high school, the place that used to literally echo with cheers, is entirely fenced off. It's just sitting there, waiting for the wrecking ball. As Harold drives these empty streets, the heavy realization sets in. Most of his friends have either passed away or just vanished entirely. The physical decay of Maryville is perfectly mirroring the decay of his own memories. Section 2. The Pioneer Park Encounter.
Seeking just a brief moment of quiet, Harold heads over to Pioneer Park, right in the center of the old town. He sits down at a weathered picnic table, looking out over the gray water of Lake Kipman. The steady water lapping against the shore gives him a bit of bittersweet comfort. I mean, it's basically the one thing that hasn't changed. But then, through the quiet of the park, Harold spots a man shuffling aimlessly around. The guy is covered in layers of mismatched, soiled clothing, and he's aggressively digging through a green metal trash can, clearly looking for anything of value. Now, Harold's watching this from a distance, and as the man finishes with the trash and starts walking directly toward him, Harold naturally feels a bit defensive. He shifts in his seat, bracing himself for a desperate plea for spare change. But as the man steps into the shadow of the park trees, Harold's defensiveness dissolves into absolute jaw-dropping shock. The sheer, brutal whiplash of this contrast is undeniable. The man walking up to him is Daniel Kelly. Back in the day, Danny was Harold's closest, most inseparable friend. In the past, Danny was the varsity football star. He was charismatic, golden, coming from literally one of the most respected families in the entire county. And in the present, he's homeless. His eyes are milky and glassy, and he's just a shell of a human being, completely ravaged by decades of addiction.
Harold is trembling at this point, but he manages to get Danny to sit down. As the fog in Danny's eyes sort of clears and he finally recognizes his old friend Harry, the brutal reality of his life is laid completely bare. Danny just looks at him and says, "It was the dope, Harry. I got onto the dope and I couldn't stop." And to prove the devastating physical toll of all this, Danny tilts his head back and opens his mouth. Harold literally recoils. Inside is just a dark, hollow cavern. There is not a single tooth left, just a dirty void framed by a blackened tongue. It is a horrifying, visceral moment that forces Harold to confront the true nightmare his best friend has been living.
Section 3. Fall of the Kellys. Harold is desperately trying to make sense of this. I mean, how does a golden boy from a pillar of the community family end up here? So he starts asking about Danny's parents. Simon, his dad, the dignified state worker, and Greta, his deeply respected mother. And what about Doug, Danny's brilliant younger brother who was the president of the Honor Society, the kid Harold genuinely thought might be president of the United States someday? Surely his family tried to help him? Well, the answer Danny gives him is just a relentless timeline of tragedy. Back in 1982, his mom, Greta, was tragically killed as an innocent bystander during a bank robbery in Bremerton. That sudden grief totally broke his father, Simon, who climbed into a bottle of whiskey and never really came out. He died in his easy chair in 1988 with the TV blaring. And his genius brother, Doug? He died of a massive cocaine overdose in the year 2000. It's this compounding generational trauma that entirely wiped out one of the county's finest families, leaving only Danny, basically scavenging just to survive.
And this next part brilliantly illustrates the tragic irony of the whole situation. When Harold asks why Doug didn't try to step in and save him, Danny just lets out this dry, hacking laugh. It turns out that brilliant Honor Society president, Doug was actually Danny's dealer. Yeah, Doug went all in on booze and coke. Danny would steal things around town, and his own brother would trade him dope for the stolen goods. The very person Harold assumed would be the savior was actually the architect of Danny's addiction.
After delivering this absolute gut punch of a history, Danny shifts uncomfortably. He tells Harold he has to get going because the local supermarket is throwing out their day-old bakery items and he needs to go secure his food for the next few days. He says, "That's my reality, Harry. I don't feel like talking anymore because it's nothing but pain." Danny hoists himself up on these trembling feet, and Harold knows he can't stop him. Digging any deeper into this raw, gaping wound is only going to cause more agony for the both of them.
Section 4. A devastating aftermath.
We're now reaching the climax of our story. The teenage boys they once were are gone forever, replaced by two weary men standing in a cold park. As they prepare to part ways for what will be the final time, this rapid, really desperate sequence of events unfolds. As Danny turns to leave, Harold clumsily just empties his wallet. He gathers up about $70 in wrinkled bills and offers it to Danny, hoping maybe it will help him survive for a few days. Danny just snatches the cash, telling him he is way past pride. Danny walks away, and Harold is left sitting completely alone in the fading gray light. Utterly devastated, Harold packs his bags early, flees the Maryville motel, and drives entirely through the night just to get back to his clean, safe home in Northport on the coast. A month passes, and Harold slowly tries to compartmentalize and just forget the nightmare he witnessed. But then, on a quiet, totally mundane morning, the phone rings. It's Harold's cousin Greg, who actually still lives near Maryville and knew the Kellys back in the day. They're just chatting about normal family news, nothing out of the ordinary. But then, Greg's tone suddenly shifts. Greg asked Harold if he remembers Danny Kelly. He says he read in the local obituaries that Danny died about a month ago. He was found dead from a drug overdose right there in Pioneer Park, lying on the ground next to a couple of bags of old bakery goods. A violent shudder rips through Harold's body. The timing, the exact location, it all clicks. Just like Harold, we can instantly connect the horrifying dots here. Harold gave a desperate addict $70 in cash. That well-intentioned, completely desperate gift was almost certainly the catalyst, the exact funding for Danny's final fatal overdose. Harold slowly hangs up the phone, the click echoing in his quiet house. He walks over to his large picture window, looking out at the beautiful, clean ocean stretching out to the horizon, a view that is so completely detached from the decay and the death of his hometown. He wipes away a single tear. His nostalgic journey into the past had literally resulted in a nightmare. In that exact moment, Harold wished with every single fiber of his being that he had never, ever gone back to Maryville. Which really leaves us with this final, haunting question. Was the cost of looking back too high? I mean, this story powerfully illustrates that the past is a closed door for a reason. When we try to force it open, we don't always find the warm, comforting memories we left behind. Sometimes we disrupt the fragile, painful reality of the present, and the consequences can be devastating. I really want you to think about that the next time you feel that strong pull of pure nostalgia. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.